At Thanksgiving, 2023, in Santa Fe, my younger sister found out I had $12 million in my investment portfolio. By dessert, my parents were insisting I share it with her because she needed it more. I'm using a throwaway for obvious reasons, but my name's Elena Torres, 42, and I've carried this story for years. I grew up in a dusty corner of northern New Mexico, the kind of place where the mountains turn purple at sunset and neighbors know your family history back 3 generations. Until I was 10, I was an only child. My parents weren't warm, but they were predictable. Dad fixed old cars in the driveway. Mom gardened and occasionally helped me with school projects. Then, one icy night in January 1991, my Aunt Sofia banged on my bedroom door, telling me to pack a bag. My mother was in the hospital. My sister Isabella was arriving 2 months early. She was tiny, smaller than the baby dolls I played with, hooked up to wires and tubes in an incubator. No one let me touch her. No one even let me too close. When Isabella came home, our house changed overnight. Mom became obsessed with keeping her safe from germs. Bleach burned my nose every morning. Hand sanitizer bottles appeared in every room. And whenever I so much as sniffled, I was sent away to stay with Grandma Rosa or Aunt Sofia. At first, it felt like an adventure. Grandma's fresh tortillas, Aunt Sofia's old mystery novels. But I wasn't stupid. I knew why I was being sent away. I wasn't the priority anymore. Isabella was the miracle. I was the afterthought. You're not being sent away for fun. You're being handled like a threat, like your very existence might harm your precious sibling. I tried everything to earn their attention in healthier ways. Straight A's? Mom barely glanced up from Isabella's latest specialist schedule. Won first prize at the regional science fair with a renewable energy project? Dad just asked if I could store the display board in the garage. Apparently, Isabella was allergic to cardboard dust. Is that even real? The breaking point came when I was 12. I had spent months teaching myself Bridge Over Troubled Water on the piano for the school talent show. But that night, Isabella had a 99.1-degree fever. Guess who didn't have a single family member in the audience? 2 weeks later, every relative, including both sets of grandparents, attended Isabella's 15-minute flute recital, where she stumbled through hot cross buns. By 7, Isabella had outgrown her health issues, but she knew how to work the system. Headache? She stayed home from school. Tired? I took over her chores. Nervous about a test? Mom called the teacher to delay it. I retreated into my bedroom, losing myself in books about art history and antiques. Ironically, my room became a sanctuary only because Isabella claimed to be allergic to my lavender air freshener. The silver lining? Those banishments to Grandma Rosa's house? She'd actually ask about my day. She let me help organize her costume jewelry collection, my first step into the world I'd later build my career in. The worst part wasn't the favoritism. It was how they rewrote history to excuse it. Elena's so independent, Isabella just needs more attention. I was a child, not a saint. Looking back, those years taught me self-sufficiency, but they also left a scar I still feel every Thanksgiving. When no one checks your homework or cares about your wins, you learn to be your own cheerleader. High school, most people either loved it or loathed it. For me, it was a ticket out of Santa Fe. While Isabella was building her middle school theater queen persona, I was quietly engineering my escape. Nothing drives you harder than knowing no one else will do it for you. Those afternoons cataloging Grandma Rosa's jewelry taught me precision, organization, and an appreciation for details. By high school, my desk looked like something from an organizational magazine. Color-coded notes, carefully planned study schedules, and a place for everything. Isabella mocked me for it, calling me Rain Man. Fine by me. Being invisible had perks. No one was tracking my failures or my successes. I could join whatever I wanted as long as it didn't interfere with my part-time job at Maria's Cafe. Shout out to Maria, who remembered my birthday when my parents didn't. Debate team? Check. National Honor Society president? Check. Editor-in-chief of the school paper? Check. Debate became my favorite. There's nothing like dismantling an opponent's argument while staying completely calm. I didn't realize it then, but those skills would later help me negotiate million-dollar deals. I won state twice. My parents didn't see either victory. They were at Isabella's C-team soccer games, where she rarely played. Then came junior year, the game changer. I took the SAT and scored a perfect 1600. Less than 1% of students ever see that number. I stared at the result screen for 20 minutes, convinced it was a glitch. I rushed home, heart racing. Mom was in the kitchen helping Isabella with her English homework. "Mom, look, I got a perfect SAT score." "That's nice, honey, but keep your voice down. Isabella has a big test tomorrow." Isabella smirked. "Yeah, some of us actually have to study, Miss Perfect." And just like that, my biggest academic achievement was dismissed like a grocery list. That was the night I realized, if I wanted my success to matter, it couldn't be for them. It had to be for me. "You're just a different kind of learner." That's what Mom said when I showed her my perfect SAT score. I still have the hard copy somewhere. It never made it to the fridge. But Isabella's C+ in English, that got Centerford space with a "we're so proud of you" magnet. When college application season came, I kept my plans to myself. I applied to 15 schools, wrote every essay, secured recommendations, and filled out the financial aid forms alone. My guidance counselor, Mr. Chen, was the real hero. He stayed late with me to finish the FAFSA because my parents were too busy. Then the acceptance letters started arriving. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Michigan, all with scholarships. I kept them locked in a box under my bed. If Isabella found out, the family's energy would shift to keeping me close. If Elena goes to Harvard, I'll be all alone. The day I got my full ride offer to the University of Michigan, Isabella made JV cheerleading. Guess which one got a family dinner celebration? I had microwave mac and cheese in my room, while they went to La Choza. That scholarship was my ticket out. Tuition, room and board, even a book allowance. I spent an hour in my favorite spot at the Santa Fe Public Library, staring out a fourth-floor window, crying. Not from sadness, but relief. At dinner I announced, "I'm going to Michigan." Mom frowned. "That's far. What if Isabella needs you?" Dad added, "Don't expect help, we've got cheer expenses." Isabella just grinned. "Can I have your room?" That summer, I worked double shifts at Maria's Cafe. Maria always slipped me extra tips and leftover pie. "Mija," she'd say. In life, the loudest ones often have the least to say. Move-in day? My parents couldn't come. Isabella had a competition. Aunt Sofia drove me instead, helped set up my dorm, and handed me an envelope. "Your Grandma Rosa wanted you to have this," she said. Inside was $500, and all the love I hadn't gotten at home. "She's so proud of you," that's what Aunt Sofia said when she handed me Grandma Rosa's envelope on move-in day. Later I learned Grandma had been quietly saving that $500 from her Social Security checks for months. That first night in my dorm at the University of Michigan, I made myself a promise. I would build a life so full, so rich in meaning, that being overlooked would be unthinkable, not to spite my family, but for the 8-year-old girl who used to be sent away for sneezing. College was a blur of all-nighters, instant ramen, and the intoxicating taste of independence. I graduated summa cum laude. My parents barely noticed. They were too busy helping Isabella transfer to her third college in 2 years. My first job was at a prestigious Detroit auction house. Name withheld for privacy, but anyone in the business would recognize it. I started in estate sales, cataloging the possessions of wealthy clients who had passed away. Not glamorous, but steady. Then came the Kingston estate, an elderly widow with no heirs, leaving behind rooms of costume jewelry. My hours with Grandma's collection had trained my eye, and one brooch caught it immediately. Art Deco. Unusually heavy, an intricate clasp far too refined for imitation. I spent my lunch break researching jewelry hallmarks, then stayed late to comb through the company's antique jewelry databases. The deeper I dug, the more convinced I became it was genuine and possibly worth a fortune. But I was the new hire. Who would believe me? So I leaned on my debate team training. I gathered evidence, comparative photos, historical context. Even spent part of my meager savings on an online gemology course. 2 weeks later, I walked into my boss, Mr. Harrison's office, armed with a presentation that could stand in court. My response? Mr. Harrison, I think we might have something significant in the Kingston collection. He barely looked up from his phone. Elena, we already cataloged those as costume pieces. I know, I said, sliding over my notes, but these maker's marks match perfectly with Cartier's 1925 signatures. That made him pause. Where did you learn this? I did some research. Long story short, that costume brooch sold for $47,000 at auction. It turned out to be part of a limited Cartier collection created for European aristocrats in the 1920s. After that, Harrison began trusting me with more. I took every artifact seriously, diving into authentication with the same obsessive detail I'd learned from Grandma Rosa. I took every online jewelry course I could afford, spent weekends at estate sales, and kept a leather-bound notebook of authentication techniques. My apartment walls were plastered with Hallmark charts, vintage catalog printouts, and auction records, and the results showed. Items others dismissed as replicas were turning into major finds. My commission checks grew, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving, I was saving. Family? Still uninterested. At Sunday dinner, Mom asked, Elena's still at that antique shop, right? Auction house, I corrected. And yes, just authenticated a rare Tiffany piece. Isabella jumped in. Speaking of jewelry, you guys have to see this charm bracelet I got at the mall. I smiled and let it go. I had something that was mine, finally. Something no one could reduce to being Isabella's sister or the family's afterthought. Then came the Rothschild collection. A massive old money estate with industry buzz swirling. 2 years into my job, I was on the team cataloging their jewelry. That's when I spotted it. A seemingly ordinary Art Nouveau piece everyone else ignored. 3 days of research later, I realized it wasn't ordinary at all. It was a long-lost treasure from a famed French jeweler's private collection, missing since World War II. When the Rothschild piece sold for $238,000, Mr. Harrison called me into his office. I thought it was a promotion. Instead, he said something that rewired my thinking. Elena, you're wasting your talent here. You should be running your own authentication business. I laughed it off at first. Me? Start a business? With what money? But the idea lingered. I began taking small freelance authentication jobs after hours. Word spread quickly. Apparently, I had an eye collectors trusted. One night, sitting in my tiny apartment surrounded by jewelry manuals, magnifying loupes, and Hallmark charts, it hit me. I could actually do this on my own. So I did something risky. I took out a loan against my car, emptied my savings, and rented a small office above a Chinese restaurant. The rent was cheap because it always smelled like Kung Pao chicken, and the Wi-Fi only worked in one corner by the window. But it was mine. Those first months were brutal. I woke at 4 a.m. calculating how long until the money ran out. My office furniture was a Goodwill folding table and a chair I'd found on the curb. Scrubbed clean, of course. In the high-expend jewelry world, reputation and connections are everything. Luckily, my years at the auction house gave me both. I started small, authentication for local antique dealers, charging less than big firms but delivering meticulous work. 6 months in, I got my break. A dealer I'd known from the auction house brought me a collection of Victorian-era brooches. The owner wanted confirmation before selling. 2 weeks of near sleepless nights later, I uncovered 2 pieces misidentified as replicas. When they sold, the owner gave me a 10% commission. My cut? $86,000. That commission was more than I'd earned in the previous 2 years combined. And almost overnight, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Private collectors wanted my eye on their pieces. Estate attorneys called about inherited jewelry. Even my old auction house started sending me authentication projects. Though they never admitted it, I'm fairly sure Mr. Harrison was quietly recommending me. By my 2nd year in business, I hired my first employee, Jenny, a recent gemology graduate who reminded me far too much of myself at her age. Sharp, detail-obsessed, and overlooked because she was quiet. Today she's my head of authentication and worth her weight in gold. We grew faster than I ever imagined. I moved into a proper downtown office. Goodbye Kung Pao chicken smell. And built a team of specialists. Word spread. I had a knack for uncovering historically significant pieces mislabeled as costume jewelry. The challenge? Keeping my success from my family. They still believed I worked at some antique shop. At Sunday dinner, Isabella smirked. Elena, I have some old jewelry I was going to donate to Goodwill. Maybe your little shop wants it? I just authenticated a $1,200,000 Fabergé egg that morning. Sure, I said. I'll look into it. Mom still introduced me as my other daughter. She works with old jewelry or something. Meanwhile, I'd been quoted in Forbes under my company name, and we had just opened our third office. Keeping the truth became a game. I'd show up in a Target clearance dress, really Chanel, and wear vintage Harry Winston to dinner just to see if anyone noticed. They never did. By year 5, we had offices in Detroit, Chicago, and New York. I was on planes more than in my own bed, trusted by some of the wealthiest clients in the world, to work in complete discretion. And the best part? My family still had no idea. The money was incredible, so much that I had to hire a team of financial advisors just to keep it organized. Still, I kept my lifestyle modest. I bought a comfortable but understated house in one of Santa Fe's better neighborhoods. I drove a sleek car, but nothing flashy. My only real indulgence? My home office. Equipped with state-of-the-art authentication tools, top-tier security, and a custom-built vault that would make Fort Knox jealous. The irony? My family thought I was scraping by. Mom would say, "It's so sweet of Elena to help us out. She must be living on ramen to afford it." Meanwhile, I'd just earned a commission larger than their mortgage from authenticating a private collection. Success is strange. The more you have, the harder it is to explain to people who've only ever seen you as less. It's like describing color to someone who's only ever known black and white. By now, my company dominated the Midwest's high-end jewelry authentication market, but every Sunday, I'd step back into my role as Elena, the modest antique shop worker. Mornings were spent on calls with collectors in Dubai, afternoons authenticating million-dollar pieces, evenings sitting at my parents' table in plain clothes, eating Mom's overcooked pot roast while Isabella bragged about her latest marketing win, usually fetching her boss's coffee. One Sunday stands out. That morning, I'd closed a 7-figure authentication on a Cartier piece hidden in a safe deposit box for 40 years. I drove straight from the meeting to dinner, still buzzing. "Elena, honey, are you okay? Your clothes are looking worn," Mom said, eyeing my deliberately plain $3,000 cashmere sweater. "If you had a real job instead of playing with old jewelry," Isabella started. Dad interrupted. "Be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you." I nearly choked on my pot roast. That was around when I began sending anonymous payments to cover my parents' mortgage and Isabella's debts. Because despite everything, they were still my family. I set up an anonymous monthly transfer of $5,000 to my parents' account. When they asked, I told them I was sending $1,000 and living on rice and beans to make it possible. They assumed the rest came from Aunt Sofia or another relative. Isabella, naturally, took credit, telling anyone who'd listen that she inspired the family to help. Meanwhile, I watched her flaunt handbags I knew were fresh off high-end boutique shelves, not outlet racks. I can spot a genuine Gucci from across the room. The monthly support helped, but it also created an odd dynamic. My parents began treating me like some self-sacrificing pauper, patting my hand, telling me how noble I was for struggling to help, all while Isabella jetted off on beach vacations, posting her blessed life on Instagram. Then came the MBA drama. Isabella announced she wanted to go back to school, another private university naturally. Mom called me in tears, saying they couldn't afford it. I suggested state schools. "Oh, honey, you don't understand," she sighed. "Your sister needs to maintain certain standards. Could you increase your help for a few years?" I raised it to $7,000 a month. It barely dented my accounts, but hearing them praise Isabella's initiative, while assuming I was eating instant noodles to make it possible. It stung. The kicker? I was already scheduled to give a guest lecture at the very business school Isabella wanted to attend, personally invited by the dean to speak on luxury goods authentication and business growth. My family had no idea. By day, I was running a multi-million-dollar authentication firm. By Sunday night, I was just Elena, the daughter who works in an antique shop. The weight of the lie was building, and that Thanksgiving, it all came to a head. I think I always knew the truth would come out in some dramatic fashion. I just didn't expect it to explode on Thanksgiving. 2 weeks before the holiday, Mom called in tears about her back pain. A herniated disc, she said, and the thought of cooking for 20 guests was too much. Out of both kindness and selfish relief, I'd endured enough of her dry turkey. I offered, "Why don't I handle the food this year? I can have it catered." "Oh, honey, we can't afford that," she protested. "Don't worry about the cost," I said. I booked one of the luxury caterers I use for client events, worth every penny. The spread would cost more than my parents thought I made in 2 months, but I didn't care. Thanksgiving morning, I set up my laptop in my old bedroom to monitor a major online auction in Hong Kong. A client was bidding on a rare Art Nouveau necklace, and if they won, I'd need to authenticate it. The meal arrived right on time, perfectly plated, every dish restaurant quality. Isabella, of course, made a jab. "Store-bought stuffing? Really, Elena? Mom's is better." This from the woman who once burned toast. She went silent after tasting the maple-glazed Brussels sprouts. At $40 a plate. While dessert was served, I slipped away to my room to check the auction. My authentication software was running, multiple tabs open with client contracts and high-value transactions. That's when Isabella barged in, claiming she needed my phone charger. She glanced at the screen and smirked. "Oh, this is too good," she said, grabbing my laptop. Before I could stop her, she strutted into the dining room. Picture it. 20 relatives, full of gourmet turkey and expensive wine they thought came from Trader Joe's, about to learn exactly what I'd been hiding. Isabella smirked. "Let's see what kind of important work Elena's doing on Thanksgiving." She spun my laptop toward the table, clearly expecting to mock some small antique sale. The room fell silent, so quiet you could hear the ornate clock I'd gifted Mom for Christmas ticking. She thought it was a reproduction. On the screen, current account balance, $12,400,000, pending authentication contract, $485,000. Recent transaction, $1,200,000 from a Hong Kong auction. Quarterly profit report, $4,200,000. Isabella's expression cycled from smug to confused to pale. This can't be right," she stammered. Mom asked, "What is it, honey?" "She's rich," Isabella whispered. "Elena's rich." If possible, the silence deepened. Then Mom laughed, full belly laughter. "Don't be ridiculous. She works at that little antique shop." Stood, smoothing my understated cashmere sweater, worth more than their monthly mortgage. "Actually, Mom, I own one of the largest jewelry authentication companies in the country. For years, I've been authenticating multi-million-dollar pieces. That little shop you've dismissed, it has offices in 3 cities." Dad coughed into his drink. Aunt Sofia dropped her fork. Uncle Miguel nearly choked. Mom's laughter twisted into fury. Her face flushed red, then purple. She shot to her feet, knocking her chair back. "You have millions? And you let us struggle?" "Struggle," I said. "I send you $7,000 every month." "While sitting on millions," she snapped. "Your sister has student loans." No congratulations, no pride, just outrage I hadn't given them more. Isabella burst into tears, sobbing about how I'd betrayed the family by keeping my success a secret. Dad piled on. "How could you be so selfish? We're your parents, we raised you." And that's when I finally lost it. Years of being disregarded, years of dismissal, years of being treated as the family disappointment. It all came out, Raised me? You sent me to Grandma Rosa's every time I sneezed. You skipped every achievement, every award, every milestone, because Isabella might feel left out. You never saved a cent for my college but took out loans for her private school. And now you're furious I built something for myself? The next 5 minutes were chaos. Mom shouting about family obligations, Dad accusing me of being ungrateful, Isabella alternating between sobbing and demanding to know exactly how much I had. The caterers tried to serve dessert without making eye contact. I took my laptop, picked up my Hermes bag, Mom once called it a nice replica, and walked out. Behind me, Mom was already discussing how to spend my money, Isabella's MBA, a new car. Driving home in my sensible, limited edition BMW, my phone lit up. The family group chat exploded. Within an hour, I had 47 missed calls and over 200 messages. Mom's texts evolved like storm stages. 7:42 p.m. How dare you walk out on family? 8:15 p.m. We need to talk about this like adults. 9:03 p.m. Your sister deserves a share of your success. 10:30 p.m. I've called a realtor about houses in better neighborhoods. 11:45 p.m. Why aren't you answering? This is your mother. Meanwhile, Isabella went nuclear on Facebook, an epic rant about her millionaire sister hoarding wealth while the family struggled. The comments were chaos. Distant cousins, old classmates, people I hadn't spoken to in decades, all weighing in on my morality. One post made my jaw drop. All those years I tried to help Elena's career, giving her advice about moving up from that little antique shop. And she was secretly wealthy. Her career advice? Suggesting I sell jewelry on Etsy. Then came the flying monkeys, relatives I barely knew, guilt-tripping me. Aunt Susan, who I see once every 3 years, called to say, family is everything. Uncle Bob emailed a lecture on sharing blessings like I was still 12. Even my third cousin's wife's sister, no idea how she got my number, felt the need to lecture me about family duty. But the real circus began when they showed up at my workplace. That Monday morning, I walked into my downtown office to find Mom, Dad, and Isabella sitting in the reception area. They'd told Jenny, my receptionist, they had an authentication appointment. Isabella clutched her Michael Kors bag like it was crown jewels. Mom started without preamble. We've discussed it as a family. A family discussion without the actual family member you're discussing, I cut in. Ignoring me, she continued. And we think it's only fair you set up trust funds for everyone. I need at least $2 million to start my new life properly, Isabella chimed in. Dad added, your mother and I would like to retire. Maybe a beach house in Florida. Did you miss the part where I've been sending you $7,000 a month? I asked. That's nothing compared to what you have, Isabella snapped. You owe us. Owe you? For what? The years you ignored me, the missed graduations, the constant comparisons? Don't be dramatic, Elena, Mom said. We gave you everything. No, I replied evenly. I gave myself everything, and I'm done. Right there in my lobby, I pulled out my phone and canceled the monthly transfers. Mom gasped like I'd slapped her. Isabella's fake crying stopped when she realized it wasn't working. When they refused to leave, I called security. Watching my 60-year-old mother being escorted out while yelling about ungrateful children was surreal. The harassment continued for weeks. New phone numbers, fake email accounts, even messages through my company's customer service. I finally sent a formal legal notice threatening harassment charges. That's when Mom played her last card. She called Grandma Rosa. Here's the thing about Grandma Rosa. She's wiser than all of them combined. Her response when Mom called to complain? Good for Elena. About time someone in this family succeeded on their own terms. Mom didn't speak to her for 2 months after that. It's been 6 months since Thanksgiving. I've moved into a new home with better security and changed every phone number I own. The company? Doing better than ever. Ironically, my family drama attracted several high-profile clients who respected my discretion. Isabella still posts passive-aggressive updates about toxic wealth and family betrayal. Word is, she's trying to start her own jewelry authentication firm. Good luck with that. Mom and Dad finally stopped contacting me after my lawyer sent a formal letter detailing how harassment charges could impact their lives. Now they're telling everyone they never wanted my money and are praying for my soul. The best part? For the first time in my life, I feel free. No more Sunday dinners laced with backhanded comments. No more shrinking my accomplishments to protect their egos. No more financing the Isabella show. My therapist says I'm finally setting healthy boundaries. I say I'm finally living authentically. So, that's my story. Thank you, Reddit, for letting me share it, and special thanks to the catering company who sent me a Christmas card saying our Thanksgiving spread was the highlight of their year. FAQs? Yes, I'm still in therapy. No, I don't regret cutting them off. Yes, Grandma Rosa is doing great. She's visiting next month to help me catalog a new collection. And one last note for Isabella. If you're reading this, that Cartier bracelet in your latest Instagram post, definitely fake, just saying. I've learned the hard way that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's survival. If you believe in standing your ground, drop a comment below and share your thoughts. And remember, your worth isn't measured by what you give away, but by the life you build for yourself.